Colonizing Mars sounds like a sci-fi movie plot, something we might do way off in the future. But it might happen sooner than you think. There are scientists practicing for life on Mars in several different places all over the world. I'm Lexi, and this is Delightfully Different. My next guest is one of those scientists. He believes that humans living on Mars will happen in our lifetime.
Hi, my name is James Burke, and I'm a Martian.
Okay.
What I mean by that is I'm the executive director of the Mars Society, and we are a nonprofit that is working towards settling Mars. And I've been at this for basically my entire adult life. I'm 48, and I started doing this in 1998 as a volunteer.
Okay.
In the last 3 years, I've been the executive director of the organization.
And it's so you guys as a nonprofit are funded by donations?
We're a grassroots nonprofit funded by small donations, by membership fees. We have about 1,200 members worldwide that support us. And then we do have a couple of small grants. We have the Utah Spaceward Bound grant, and we have one from NASA. Utah Space Grant Coalition, and then one from NASA called Spaceward Bound. So those are two small grants we have. Over the years, we've also gotten some major donations. We got $1 million from Blue Origin's Club for the Future in 2021. And way back in 2002, we got a donation from Elon Musk's foundation that helped us build the station that's behind me here.
And you've got famous members, including Elon Musk and a few others. Can you name some of the other famous members of the Mars Society?
We have an annual conference every year. We've had all kinds of folks speak at that. I mean, I remember James Cameron spoke at our 1999 conference before he had done any of the Avatar movies. And at that time, he wanted to do a Mars project. And so he was talking about that.
Okay.
We've had the NASA administrator, Jim Bridenstine, speak at our conference. Elon Musk, I mentioned, has spoken recently in 2020. He zoomed in from one of the Tesla factories with an iPad and talked to us for about an hour about Mars. I actually got to ask him, where are you going to land on Mars? And he threw the question back at me and asked me where I thought was a good place.
And what did you say?
And I had an answer ready. The floor of the Grand Canyon on Mars, Valles Marineris, is a canyon system about the size of the United States.
Okay.
The floor of that, there's places where the air pressure is very high on Mars. And also there's liquid water, most likely right underneath the surface because it was a dry lake. Yeah. And so those would be ideal places, in my opinion, to land.
So Elon Musk is looking to you for advice. That's got to feel pretty cool.
Absolutely.
And there are chapters all over the world.
We do have chapters in over 45 countries. We have chapters all across the U.S. as well, and we're currently working on a political initiative where we want to give NASA a goal of humans to Mars. NASA has never had a real humans to Mars program.
Right.
They talk about it. Currently, they have a program called Artemis that is focused on the moon and eventually going to get to Mars. But the details of the human Mars mission are not well defined.
Okay.
And so we advocate for them being more detailed about that. We've been talking about a Mars mission. I mean, our president, Robert Zubrin, he wrote the book about that in the 90s. It's called The Case for Mars. And he was talking to everybody back then about it. We've had a plan to easily and cheaply send humans to Mars since then. And now it's just the will of getting it done.
That's interesting. And you've been working towards that and practicing, and you've got the Mars Desert Research Station, among others. Tell me about the Mars Desert Research Station.
Yeah, this is our flagship project. It's a research facility in southern Utah where people can come and simulate a Mars mission for 2 weeks. I did one last year. I was the commander of Crew 261 at the station. We've now had over 300 crews.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Over 2,000 people. And 4 of those crew members have become astronauts.
What, really? Who are the 4 astronauts?
Cyan Proctor flew on Inspiration 4. Jessica Watkins is a NASA astronaut. She's stayed on the space station, and she's in line to be one of the Artemis astronauts. She could very well be the first woman to walk on the moon.
Wow.
And then we also more recently had Kelly Girardi and Shauna Pandya have become commercial astronauts.
These are four women that you just rattled off?
That's right.
Which is also really cool because this it seems to like it's been a men's game for a long time until recently.
Well, actually, what we have learned through empirical research at our station is that women do better at living on another planet than men do.
Really?
Because when there's a problem, and this is in general, right? In
Okay.
general, there are lots of examples of, you know, men that communicate very well and women that are just charge off and do things, right? But in general, women, when there's a problem, they communicate better. They huddle up and decide what are we going to do together. And men often just charge off and try to fix the problem without a lot of communication. That's one aspect of it, but just, when you have a group of 6 to 8 people that are living on a space colony, well, living on Mars or the moon, their lives are in each other's hands every moment. So the smallest mistake could endanger everyone. So, and we feel that doing this out in Utah for 2 weeks, when you're in simulation protocols, you forget that it's a simulation. It feels like you're on Mars.
Really?
We don't allow the crew to go outside without putting a analog spacesuit on, so a helmet and backpack. So that's sort of the center of the activity every day as you wake up and get ready to do that.
Okay.
During my 12-day mission, we did 19 of those EVAs where we gear up and go outside and do things. We also have it where there's a set of little tunnels that connect the buildings. There's about 6 buildings, small buildings at our campus, and you can walk between them if you use the tunnels, because they're meant to be like pressurized tunnels where everything's connected on Mars. If you
Okay.
do that, you don't have to put a spacesuit on. But once you go outside, you do. And so that makes it so that you're planning out what you do and you're extremely careful when you're out there. We also do things like drive rovers, which are kind of these Polaris Ranger electric vehicles. It's kind of like a cross between a golf cart and a pickup truck,
Yeah.
but it can go off road. We don't, I mean, we have dirt roads. We don't go off road, but it's that kind of vehicle. It's kind of rugged. And you can have 2 astronauts riding in those with our gear on. But they have a limited range because they're electric vehicles. So we have mission rules about how far they can go out and when you have to turn around and come back. So planning all that out and planning out what you're going to do becomes sort of the focus of activity for a lot of the crew during these missions.
And putting on one of those seat suits does seem like it's quite the task. And I know because I live in Utah, I know how hot it gets down there. And I'm assuming it's pretty hot on Mars. I don't actually know.
Mars is a desert, but Mars is actually really cold because the
Oh,
air
okay.
is so thin. The air on Mars is only 1/1000th the thickness of the Earth.
Okay.
So it's actually a cold planet. The temperature fluctuates from like a little bit above freezing to like way below freezing. So
Oh,
it's never like hot on Mars. If
okay.
we thickened the atmosphere someday, it could be an Earth-like planet. And it was an Earth-like planet when the Earth was still being formed 4.5 billion years ago. Mars was a warm, wet planet with liquid oceans. So
Really?
one of the big mysteries is there life on Mars? Is there life down in the water table left over from those times? Because
Right.
Mars had everything you need for life. It's in the habitable zone and it had liquid water for a long time. And it also could be the case that life arose on Mars and migrated here through asteroid impacts and then really got going here. So we could all be Martians.
Okay. That'd be kind of fun. I would like to call myself a Martian too. And you live there for about 2 weeks at a time when crews live in this station. It's for 2 weeks at a time.
That's right. We have a field season that runs throughout the year for about 9 months. We don't operate in the summer because it's too hot there, but from October through about May, we have 2 week slots there.
Okay, so that sort of answers my how hot is it out there question in those suits. um, what does it actually what is the structure made up of or structures?
Well, the main building that you see behind me is the habitat. It's a 2-story building. It's meant to simulate the spacecraft that you came with from Earth.
Okay.
That's the craft you rode on. Maybe it was on the top of a big rocket, and you had your crew of 6 in there strapped down, and they rode that to Mars and they landed in that on Mars. They're not
Okay.
going to take off with that. There's going to be another vehicle called an Earth return vehicle they would take home.
Okay.
But this would be their home on Mars. It's a two-story building. On the second floor is six staterooms, a kitchen, and a common area. And then on the lower deck, there's lab space. There's the area where we put our suits on, and there's two airlocks. So that building is essentially made out of a composite material. We made it in 2001. I believe at the time we were using some carbon fiber, like this honeycomb material that was new. It was originally designed, I believe, for seasteading colonies where people were going to like try to set up a floating city out in the ocean, out in the Atlantic Ocean, and claim that as land.
Okay.
Seasteading, you can look that up. People still do that. But we built a station up in the Arctic before this one, up in Canada on
Okay.
Devon Island, where there's a big impact crater, and we still operate that station as well. That one's called the Flashline Mars Arctic Station.
And why did you choose Utah and that area in Canada to do this?
Both of them are called Mars analogs. They're places on Earth that are like Mars geologically. So
Okay.
this area in Utah is near Goblin Valley State Park, which, lots of TV shows and movies have been filmed there because it looks like Mars. The
Right.
movie Galaxy Quest, for example, a lot of that was filmed when they were on the planet. They filmed that out there. Um, so it's an area geologically and operationally, it's isolated. It's way out in the middle of the desert. The closest town's about 20 minutes away off a dirt road, and it's a small town. Closest hospital's like 2 hours away. So if
Oh, wow. Okay.
there's a big medical emergency, we have to take someone there.
And
So it is a little dangerous to operate out here.
I was going to say, it's kind of like where all the national parks are too, or at least on the way to a lot of the different national parks, but you're not like somewhere
Right.
someone can see you off the road, are you?
No, we're up off of a dirt road. There is some people that come out here and do off-roading and look for dinosaur fossils and things like that. We actually have a dinosaur dig site that's north of us. That's like the biggest one in the US,
Okay.
where they've pulled out like, I don't know, more than a dozen intact dinosaurs. And we actually found a dinosaur bone on crew number one at the station.
Okay, well, how cool is that?
Yeah. And what was interesting about that story is we found it in a place that a rover never could go.
Really
So that shows the importance of human explorers on Mars. You're going to find more stuff if you send people versus robots.
interesting. Okay, I love to hear that. And then, so if someone, you don't want anybody going there. If someone happens to be heading in that direction, you don't want them coming to the Mars Desert Research Station.
We're not open to the public generally, but we do have a little kind of viewing area that people can park and sort of look at the station
Okay.
from the dirt road. And if we're out there doing things, like we can drive by them and wave.
Okay.
You know. So we actually do get some tourists, but they're not permitted to come into the campus area. And
Um,
we have signs up everywhere.
and when you're getting ready to start a mission, do you do like a simulated flight there inside of the structure that you recently described?
We don't, no, we don't kind of like pretend we're landing on Mars, if that's what you mean. We sort of
Yeah.
like the way I did it is we just woke up. We got there one day, kind of unpacked, got everyone settled, went to sleep. And then when we woke up, we were in sim. We had landed on Mars. That
Okay.
was kind of a cool way to do it, we
Right.
thought.
And then how do you deal with stuff like food and drink and like going to the bathroom or taking a shower?
Great questions. So for food, we do grow some food in a greenhouse to supplement. We grow cherry tomatoes and salad greens, herbs,
Okay.
and every crew helps tend to those plants during their mission. We're trying to get a little bit more scientific rigor on that, but basically we grow a bunch of, things to supplement. We have a lot of shelf stable food and freeze dried food, and you can actually do a lot of things with freeze dried food and just things that you would have any person that would have in their pantry, like spaghetti and rice that's dry. Like those can be stored for a long time.
Okay.
There's vendors we use that have cans of food that last up to 30 years. Like things like banana chips that are freeze dried,
Right.
But there's different other products like crumbled meat that you can put water on and it heats up that has this exothermic reaction and you can almost cook with that.
Is
So
this
there are,
the thing that someone would eat if they were really truly going to Mars? In
I think when we get to people going to Mars and the way NASA does food, it's all highly tailored to the person's diet and nutrition needs.
oh,
So a lot of thought and rigor has been put into that. And we used to do a food study that was kind of like that, where we would ask everyone, are you vegetarian? What is your favorite food? What are you intolerant of? And we'd sort of plan the 2 weeks around that, but that became a lot. And we're mostly a bunch of volunteers and scientists that have their own research projects. So,
right.
so currently we don't do anything like that. It's more just we're supplying each crew with a standard set of shelf-stable food and some other things, and then it's up to them to turn that into actual meals.
Okay.
But my crew was with a bunch of folks from Europe, a bunch of folks from France,
Yeah.
and we actually had a lot of fun cooking and trying to outdo each other. One of our crew members was making crepes for breakfast, and I made pancakes and kind of some warm breakfasts, and I was getting made fun of a lot because Europeans don't usually have warm breakfasts like Americans do, so that was a thing. But by the end of the mission, they really liked my pancakes, so.
I bet they did. Pancakes are delicious. And then for like drinking water, do you bring that with you, or is that something that you try to create there? I mean, you're in a very dry area,
We
especially in
are.
Utah.
And I also need to answer your question about like taking showers. So
Yeah, yeah.
we do have water there that we bring in. We truck in water. So there's a big water tank that's about 200 gallons, and
Okay.
that's enough for the crew for 2 weeks, as long as they're not crazy about water usage. Um, we take showers. You can take a Navy shower, it's called, in about 2 minutes. You basically just wet yourself, turn the faucet off, and then soap yourself up, rinse yourself off, and that's it.
Okay.
You can do that. You can get used to doing that, and it's just like a normal shower. You get just as clean.
Right.
It's not as pleasant as sitting under the warm water for 20 minutes, but you can't really do that.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, we filter the water. It's basically well water from the town, so it's already pretty clean, but we do filter it before
Okay.
we drink it and cook with it. So that's all part of the system we have in the station.
And then is there plumbing and electricity and stuff in there?
We do have plumbing. We have a toilet. We have an RV style toilet.
Okay.
We don't in a septic tank. We don't put paper down it. But otherwise, it's just a normal RV toilet and septic. We are going to actually install a gray water recycling system now. There's some really innovative work that's been done by some of our colleagues where they have almost like a swamp-based recycling system where you're pumping in sewage into it and you can pull out gray water and then purify that. So we're going to set that up in the future, but for now it's just essentially a toilet with a septic that we pump out.
I'm Lexi, and this is Delightfully Different. Today I'm talking with a Martian, James Burke. He's a scientist and the executive director of the Mars Society. And then I understand that when you grow the food, you have soil there that is similar to that you would find on Mars?
We did an experiment during my crew where we took some simulated Martian regolith, so Martian dirt, from the Mojave Desert in California. So it's these little sandy pebbles, no organics at all in that dirt. And we were able to take that, add some compost to it, add some spirulina algae, and we were able to get tomato plants sprouting in that. And
Oh,
what was really cool is we tried to do the same thing with soil from Utah, from the
right.
desert. And that didn't work. The soil was too mucky and too congealed. So in that case, Mars was more fertile than Utah. But
Interesting.
but essentially, that's what we would do on Mars is we would bring in some of the soil from the ground. We would treat it so that it didn't have this chemical in it called perchlorates because you can't grow plants with that. You'd have to remove the perchlorates that are on Mars, which is a result of all the nuclear radiation hitting Mars for millions of years because Mars doesn't have a magnetic field like the Earth to protect us from that. So you treat the soil, get it down to those rocky pebbles that have no organics in them, and then you could do what we did, which is basically take some kitchen scraps, turn them into compost, maybe apply something like the spirulina as a biostimulant, and you're off and running. And so we work on stuff like that at the Mars Technology Institute that we've set up. We want to build ways to create food at scale, and we're doing a contest right now called Mars Against Hunger.
Okay.
We have a cash prize for researchers to go look at that field and look at how we can make food at scale.
That's awesome. I love it. What was the hardest part about living there for the 2 weeks?
Getting everyone to work well together was an early challenge. We had a lot of communication challenges with people that were, English wasn't their first language, or, they're like one person just like was so excited all the time to be there that she just kept interrupting everyone. And like it was really rubbing another crew member the wrong way. So we had to like have a all hands meeting about that. Let's not talk over each other. Let's, especially what the radios, like if two people are talking on the radio, you can't hear either of them. So like everyone just kind of slow down and use full sentences and stop and pause. So that was one aspect of it.
Okay.
Um, Also just we had so much to do. We had 20 experiments we were working on at the same time over those 2 weeks, just making sure people were getting breaks and we're not burning out. We're not getting too overwhelmed with everything. We were all really tired by the end of the mission, but we still like we were operating very well as a crew. We could have stayed doing that type of work for a long time, more
Wow.
than just 2 weeks. So we were I felt like we were really good at that. Our,
What was your favorite thing that you did while you were in there? What was your favorite part about it? Or the easiest thing, I
we
guess?
went on an EVA. We went on, four of us went out with our suits on and drove out to this canyon system and we flew drones around it. And
Okay.
for me, it felt like four friends. It was late in the mission, so we were pretty good at doing everything at that point. So for me, it just felt like four friends going to the beach for an afternoon. Although the beach was Mars and we were flying drones and we had spacesuits on, but otherwise it was like that.
Okay, gotcha.
So
And the folks who do this, like the folks that were with you doing it, I understand they're coming from all over the world. Who are these people? Are they future astronauts? What are they doing? Why do people want to?
yeah, that's a great question. We have people all over the world, all different types of people come, but in general, it's folks that are university students or recent graduates, people in their like 20s and 30s, and but not exclusively. We've had lots of other folks as well, and they're generally scientists. They have some scientific discipline. They're generally people that want to be astronauts. This is kind of a way to practice that, to get ready. It's like the next best thing to actually being an astronaut is you're simulating being out in space and operating as an astronaut. We don't use the same gear that, you would use as an astronaut because the spacesuits, a real spacesuit costs millions of dollars. So we have simulated gear, you know. But it's essentially like the operationally feels just like being an astronaut. And so, yeah, this attracts all kinds of people, but in general, it's young professionals or university students that want to work in this field.
Okay. And then I'm assuming a lot of them are doing research as well.
Yes, there's a lot of geologists that come because there's a lot of great geology things to see out here. Microbiologists that study extremophiles, that's another area of focus, but also folks that are like psychologists that want to kind of study human behavior,
Okay.
study how people operate in harsh environments.
And
So we've had a lot of research projects around those as well.
I'm assuming it's difficult to get in to do this. Is there like a waiting list of?
It's not. We do operate it like an academic program where we ask people to apply.
Okay.
We take most applications and we schedule people out. And so we definitely have slots open right now. Anyone can apply. It
Really?
costs $3,500 for a professional for 2 weeks or $2,000 for a student that's in a degree program.
Okay.
So it's affordable. And you
Great.
can apply to as an individual or you can apply with a crew. You can form a crew of 6 to 8 people and apply together.
If someone's
Yeah,
just some Yahoo that's interested in it and is not educated in this in any sort of a fashion, are they also able to
absolutely.
apply?
Absolutely. One of my crew members was a friend of mine who's she's a philosophy professor at a
Okay.
college. No space experience, like not a ton of camping experience either, by the way. So she was but her role was our health and safety officer. She made sure we were all drinking enough water and everyone was like, watching any symptoms they had.
Right.
And she was great. She was very useful and she helped out with a lot of stuff, even though she had she had very little confidence in herself to be on this mission. But by the end of it, she was a Martian. She was great.
It takes some cojones to go sign up for that too. If you're not, I understand why she probably had low self-esteem about it, but that's pretty cool. And then I understand that a lot of volunteers help you guys out as well.
Yes, that's how we sustain the whole program, the whole nonprofit is through volunteers all around, people all around the world that help us remotely, people that come to Utah during one of our work parties, work crews.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we just had a work crew in October where they fixed up a lot of things in the station, redid a couple of the staterooms, made some upgrades to other things. So yeah, that's how we've really been able to sustain this program because we operate on a very small budget, shoestring budget for this.
Right.
We don't have this huge grant from NASA that's millions of dollars to keep this going. As a matter of fact, we get very little funding, as I mentioned, from NASA.
Right.
And we started this program kind of to get their attention of like, this is what you guys should be doing. You guys should have a Mars base somewhere where people are practicing working together because that's how we're going to get ready. So fortunately now NASA does have the Chipea and Hera simulations that they do in Johnson Space Center. So,
Okay.
and one of our folks, Sergey, who's the director of our station, just went through the Hera program for 45 days.
Okay.
So we have a little bit of cross pollination now with NASA.
And 45 days is significantly more than 2 weeks.
Yeah, and they had a little different approach than us. Like they're looking at going to Mars as like an isolation experiment.
Oh,
Where he didn't have any access to his cell phone or the internet for 45 days.
okay.
And that was really hard for him. That was like going off and being a monk or something.
Right.
He said like he's changed a little to going through that
Okay.
experience.
I'll bet.
But like that's a little different than our philosophy, honestly. Like our philosophy is when we get to Mars, we're going to be exploring, we're going to be in close communication with with Earth, our colleagues back on Earth, our families back on Earth. We're going to be sending one-way video messages. We're going to be using email as we use email today, almost the same. You have to imagine there's a, 9 to 15 to 20-minute delay. So you're not going to have a real-time IM chat with someone on Earth, but you can have an email chat with someone. So that's kind of the difference. Some people like NASA and the Russians also did a 500-day Mars mission, and they basically just have people in a room locked in an area and they exercise and they do other stuff. But like to me, that's not a real good analog of what it's going to be like. Because when we get to Mars, it's going to be all about exploring and looking for fossils, looking for life, looking for, you know, interesting things, going outside, putting your suit on, going outside, coming back in. Like that's what the crews are going to be doing. They're not going to be sitting in a can for a year
Right.
waiting for their rocket to fuel up so they can come home. It just doesn't make sense to me. So that's a little bit of a philosophy difference we have with NASA, but we're working on them.
Okay, gotcha. Can you tell me about the Musk Observatory?
Yes, so that we named it after Elon Musk and his foundation because he gave us an initial donation to help build the campus.
Okay.
We have two observatories on campus. That one is a solar facing observatory. So on Mars, you actually would watch the sun a lot because if a solar flare came to Mars, you'd have to get into a shelter
Oh,
because of the
okay.
radiation.
Cool.
That's not a danger on Earth because we're protected by the magnetic field, the Van Allen radiation belts. But on Mars or out in interstellar space, interplanetary space, you would have to watch for solar flares and get in a shelter. So we made that part of our mission is we had a person that was watching the sun every day and making sure there wasn't a solar flare headed for us.
Wow.
Our second observatory is fully robotic, fully automated. It's called the MDRS Robotic Observatory. It's kind of off in the distance, and crews can operate that, and that's a full observatory that can reach any part of the northern sky
Okay.
at night. And at night, you can imagine there's no light pollution out here, so
Right.
the stars are amazing. Like we have pictures where people have captured like the Milky Way full color
Yeah.
out there. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
We go,
Astronomy is great.
we go camping out there a lot. My husband takes the night Milky Way photos all the time. It's crazy cool. So you've got the one station in Utah, the other one on Devon Island. Are there more stations in the works?
There are other stations around the world, not that we maintain. So there's a station in Poland, for example, called Lunaris. It's a lunar and Mars analog,
Okay.
and it's like an isolation type experiment. It's like a couple of trailers or bunkers that they've renovated to do that. There's one in Iceland that's in a lava tube called Chill Ice. It's kind of
Okay.
interesting. They built that in a lava tube, also relevant for the moon and Mars because a lava tube is essentially just a big cave. And so if you could seal that off and pressurize it and put oxygen in there, that's a instant habitat for space, right? So, and then there's one in Hawaii called High Seas that another group operates. That's a lunar analog. So there's about a dozen around the world. We are developing some with our chapters in Mongolia and Australia. The Mongolians are really interesting. They've done a lot of work in the last 3 years to raise money for theirs. They actually now our chapter has become the Mongolian Space Agency officially. Our chapter is called Mars V over there, and it's
Okay.
a group of a bunch of talented young people in Mongolia. And they recently got funding from the president of the country, and so they're working on their analog station in the Gobi Desert. And I was actually just invited to be the commander of one of the first crews for that next year.
And you're going to do it?
I think so. I'd like to. Yeah, it's next
Okay.
November 25. So
And now I understand that the research that's done with the Mars Society and the Mars Desert Research Station is available for other scientists to use. It's free to other scientists.
yeah, a lot of what we do is for the benefit of the scientific community. We operate the station as an open platform. Any researcher can come and bring their own experiments. We have a whole wet lab and biology lab, geology lab where people can analyze samples at the station. So people can come there, do their own research. They own the research they do. But we're working to set up a journal where people can publish their research through us. And then we have our annual conference where people can present their work at the conference. Last year it was at University of Washington. This in the last few months. This next year it'll be at University of Southern California in
Okay.
Los Angeles in October of next year. But yeah, we invite researchers to come present on all topics related to Mars, and they do. And a lot of those we put up on our YouTube channel. So our
Okay.
YouTube channel has thousands of videos of conference talks
I
since we started.
saw. It
Yeah.
was overwhelming. It was a lot of videos. What is the Rover Challenge series?
We have a university rover challenge every June 1st that happens out at the station in Utah where university teams from around the world build a rover during the course of the academic year, a physical Mars rover, like full size, like the size of an Opportunity or Spirit. And then they bring them out to Utah. And we have a series of competitions like autonomous driving, retrieving a sample, helping a stranded astronaut. We have the rovers drive up and like manipulate switches on a little rocket,
Wow.
things like that. So there's a whole competition called the University Rover Challenge that we do. And then our work has spawned other people around the world to do rover challenges like that. So there's one in Europe, in Poland, and there's one in India
Oh, wow.
every year. So, similar to ours.
When do you think that will actually, someone in the world will actually send a person, a human, at least one, to Mars?
Keep an eye on what the SpaceX company is doing with the Starship rocket. That looks like our transportation system that we're going to have available here to go to Mars. It's designed to land on Mars. It's under contract with NASA to land on the moon as part of the Artemis program, but it is designed to land on Mars. And so when I actually interviewed Elon in 2020, I asked him this. I said, "How soon is the Mars mission?" And he said, keep an eye on the orbital refueling milestone that they have for Starship development. Once Starship can launch and get refueled in Earth orbit, then we're about 2 years away from
Wow.
from Mars. And so right now, that looks like that's going to happen next year.
Whoa, that's
So
really
we're
great.
about, yeah. So I think the most optimistic timeline we have right now for using Starship to do a Mars mission would be the crew would land in 2030. There'd be a
Okay.
cargo mission first in 2028, because every 22 months there's an opportunity to send a mission to Mars using conventional propulsion. It's a 6 to 9 month journey from Earth to Mars, but you have to wait until the planets are lined up to do that.
Right.
If you had different forms of propulsion, like warp drive, for example, or like even nuclear thermal, which is scientifically possible but never been built, it might be quicker. Like a nuclear thermal rocket would take 3 months, for example, but you'd still wait for the Earth and Mars to line up.
Right.
And so a full mission to Mars where you're going to send people and then have them come back would be about 3 years. So they'd go to Mars, they'd be on the surface, they'd work on the surface for about a year, waiting for that window to open back up, and then they come home.
And do you think that sometime like in our lifetime we'll be colonizing Mars?
Absolutely. I mean, we're getting closer to that reality every day. I've been at this for, 28 years or so.
Yep.
Like it was total science fiction when I started. Like most people would think we weren't going to get to Mars for 100 years.
Right.
Even congressmen would say that, like the congressman on the NASA committees would say that on TV. We're not going to get to Mars for 100 years. And I'm like, no, it's right there. But movies like The Martian came out. The Martian, and what else? Like there's a show For All Mankind that's really good that kind of shows near future technology.
Yes.
Like there's nothing science fiction really about what we're doing. We're using today's technology to go do what we do. And so, yeah, I definitely think it's going to happen in our lifetime, and I think it's going to happen pretty fast. I think Starship is the key.
Well, I'm excited for that to happen. And you are one of the people that's going to be able to take some credit for helping that happen. And I've got less than a minute left for this interview. So I just want to make sure that I say thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. And I'm going to have links to all of your social media and all your websites. I know that you guys look for donations and stuff as well if people want to donate.
That's the best way to help us, is donating to us. And we are a nonprofit, tax-deductible organization. We're a 501c3 charity, so donations to us are tax-deductible.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day today.
Thank you so much, Lexi. It was a pleasure being on your show.
If you're interested in going on a mission to the Mars Desert Research Station, would like to donate, or are just curious, check out the links that are posted wherever you got this podcast. Thanks for joining me this week on Delightfully Different. If you or someone you know lives life differently, I'd love an interview. Email me, lexiontheradio@gmail.com. That's LEXI on the radio@gmail.com, or go to delightfullydifferentpodcast.com and have a delightful week.